you gotta keep up the stiff upper lip and all that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Uh, mhm. So of course we're going to do news because why the heck not? Why break with the cycle and stuff we didn't like, and just have a general discussion about 2020 as a gaming year. So let's start with something very much fun. Cyberpunk 2077 sex speedrunner gets laid in just 11 minutes. By Kristen Livingston 5 days ago on PC Gamer. Speedrunner Anus. Yeah. In bringing his very particular set of skills to the Night City sex scene. We and this is not the first time that the PC Gamer has written about Tomato Anus, which that's just yeah, that imagery right there. Well, anyway, he beat 5 Fallout games combined under 90 minutes. He had to change his name to Tomato Angus for games done quick. Okay, and most only perhaps he does Fallout New Vegas sex speed runs where you have to sleep with every possible partner as quickly as you can. This current record is under 29 minutes. Uh, I shouldn't be surprised that there's a speed running sex in video games as they become
Yeah,
more and
that
more
sounds like a
prevalent.
that sounds like a gimmick that I would do, but I prefer to enjoy the game.
Also, there's not as many same sex. Well, I guess you can
Yeah.
find sex in games, but more like mainstream sex games with same sex partnerships and love scenes are not as still kind of rare. Uh, no, now Tomato Anus is putting his very peculiar set of skills, and I'm reading this from this. I'm not reading it over and over again just because to wear the joke. To work on Cyberpunk 2077, seeing how fast he can go from start of the game to having sex with someone, just I guess anyone. His record currently stands at 10 minutes 2027, which is about how much time it takes me to pick up a set of eyebrows in the character creator. Also, recently he was taking him around 2 hours for the start to the game for his first sexual encounter. That seems like a long while. Well, but the way Cyberpunk 2020 is structured, players don't have to access to the full city when the game begins. First, the prologue is a problem because sex workers in night cities are outside these prologue boundaries. Okay, but it's still Will or Willie. There's a when there's a Will or Willie, there's a way. Tomato, etc. Starts by making out his character's body, gives to stamina, reflect to extra speed. The 7 minutes into the street kid Lapa, go to the tree after he is in the car with Jackie ready to begin his first real job. Once in the mission area, he simply sprints past the enemies, run into a ledge, and starts fist gliding, weapon swapping glitch that propels you slightly forward. Having some parkour gets into a position, jump into the street using no fall damage, negotiation glitch, as you plummet safely to the ground from great heights by sliding. Having slides through the city, the world clearly car lessons is not really supposed to be there. But luckily, since the night city are in place, including the sex worker who agrees to get down with Tomato. Yeah, at the 27 mark. There's not much time for romance or plenty of time for business. Okay.
That doesn't
So,
surprise me. It's just like prostitute.
say GTA Cyberpunk because you can have sex workers on the street, and that's been a feature since I think GTA Vice City, and also the speed running to sex. That's also a thing. There's well, I I'm betting somebody's gonna mod the hell out of Cyberpunk 27 to be exclusively a sex game.
Yeah,
That just seems to
that
be
wouldn't surprise me.
yeah,
I
especially
mean,
when if they can model you know NPCs and stuff like that, you're gonna see some very funky NPCs walking around sex modded. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look at, for example, Fallout 4 and Skyrim videos, and if especially with their male females, usually the females look vanilla, you're looking at somebody who's using that game for as a sex game. Don't ask me how I know. I just know.
people still use Skyrim and mod the hell out of it to
Mhm.
make dirty videos out of them.
Yeah.
So, maybe now they'll finally like move to something newer and better.
I guess. But that would require Cyberpunk 27 to be even more stable, a little more stable, I guess, or more moddable. Tencent acquires Warframe, developer Digital Extremes, and several other studios by Rich Sampson 5 days ago. Fingers in a hell of a lot of pies. This is going to be relevant because we're going to be probably talking about Tencent during the week, the year in review. Tencent had acquired Leiyu Technologies in a $1.5 billion billion deal, US, meaning I'm going to click on this link because this is very interesting. That has been hinted at early this year, with Sony also reported to be interested, but was signed off by Leu shareholders on December 11th and finalized today. Leu was a chicken processing company until 2014, began to diversify into video games by acquiring major stake in Canadian developer Digital Stream, developer Warframe. Subsequently, Liu went all off Splash Damage, which most recently has been working on Gears multiplayer and Gears Tactics, and a 20% stake in developer Certain Affinity, which is recent times of work on Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered and Halo Infinite. Finally, Liu established Athlon Games, which is currently working with Amazon on the Lord of the Rings MMO as a publishing partner. More comprehensive, includes just under 50% of Epic Games, so stakes in Activision, Blizzard, Ubisoft, Paradox Interactive, and many more. So yeah, our old friends at Tencent are gobbling up even more games. So I guess we're having on one hand we have Microsoft. They're the two companies that, well, I mean, other companies like Amazon being also buying studios and like, but really has been Microsoft has really been going down on acquiring studios, and Tencent has gone, if not acquiring entire studios, significant percentages therein. So, which I need to remind everybody, you don't need to acquire the entire studio if it's, if it's right. I'm going to leave that news for a little later. Yeah. Talking about again, CD Projekt Red. Class action suit filed for CD Projekt investors over over Cyberpunk 27. Lawsuit has been filed, but courts may not let it proceed. By Jonathan Bolding, that was 21 hours ago, or as of yesterday, I take it. A New York-based law firm has filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of investors of CD Projekt Red SA. The lawsuit by Rosen Law Firm is for damages for those who purchased securities in CD Projekt Red between January 16, 2020 and December 17, 2020, based on statements made by those associated with Cyberpunk 77 development. Primarily, the suit alleges that false misleading statements were made about Cyberpunk 2077 being playable on the current generation of Xbox and PlayStation systems, the removal of 27 from the PlayStation Store, and the offer of refunds by Sony, Microsoft, and CD Projekt itself are widely cited in business circles as a reason for a plunge in CD Projekt's stock price despite its high sale numbers. In the weeks prior to 27's release, CD Projekt been hearing hints about this going to happen, and apparently it has happened.
Yep.
Whether or not it actually proceeds, as the subheader says, we'll see, because they have to find whether they actually. There are a lot of reasons why it can proceed. This is a company that's set in Poland. This is a lawsuit in the United States. There's the fact that also they have to show actual harm. I said, well, we sold very well, so there's no losses. And just because
just because we didn't make all the money in the world.
Yeah. And to follow it up, 6 days ago, Andy Chung, I think we talked about this, and Cyberpunk 27 has already sold more than 13 million copies, which is a lot. It isn't the 25 million copies that Destiny sold, but we're in the double digits now, so yep, that's a thing. Just sorry, I was double checking something here. So yeah, I mean, CD Projekt Red has done. So we're gonna see what happens now.
Yeah, it's they're gonna have an interesting year coming up, especially considering just I guess the loss of goodwill from gamers is. We'll see which will hurt them more, financial, business stuff, or is it going to be gamer goodwill that is going to hurt them more? And I think it's going to really see what they do to make it up to the players. It's just being disappointed and shoving out a clearly unfinished game out the door really
help change some aspects of the industry last week. But it's iffy right now. That's a prediction that is hard to make right now, as most of our predictions have been very iffy. As we'll talk about that, later on. Talking about, I guess, and that is Steam adds some new ways to find winter sale deals. pages and faceted browsing has meant to help you drill down to exactly what you're looking for. Bound the shock. And that reminds me, I want to buy the Diversity Divinity 2 one, which is now on sale again. I'm probably gonna buy it. Game stores, they follow very different trajectories through the holiday season. Epic, the young upside, is wildly gunning out of free games as every possible direction and buying and a bid for your attention, while Valve, the long-reigning champions, have rolled a new Steam Labs experiment called faceted browsing that provides more granular control without you seeing the Steam Winter Sale. I think this is interesting because their store kind of still sucks, right?
Yeah.
It's very simplistic. The client's very thing. It's not as bad as Steam used to be back in the day. Steam, for people who don't remember this, probably a lot of people watch this, was just a spreadsheet. And it was a spreadsheet it was brown, it was yellow, black, and gray. So it was very difficult, even if you're not colorblind, to tell, because it was just like, oh, this is a game and this is listing and another. That was it. And it was, you had to have Steam in order to play the later editions of their Valve games, which was particularly Half-Life and then Half-Life 2. So yeah, it was a bit of a mess, but of course now it looks completely different. Like, it doesn't, giving away games for free is not what we do. We sell games, but if we present, it would make it easier for people to get to their games, especially there, because again, that whole idea of being in the ecosystem, then no problem. Well, Epic saying people will come to it.
That hasn't worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up a couple of free games. I haven't played any of them, but I picked them up. But that's it. It's like, oh, it's a free game in Epic.
No, I got
Cool.
Daniel,
Yeah, okay.
got Daniel the Demon on my end saying that I'd recommend Div 2. Yeah. Right now I took a pic of it. It's 17.99 on Steam right now. So 60% off. That's a pretty good deal. And yeah,
Yeah.
I've been we'll discuss that when we get to our end of year stuff. But yeah, playing Divinity Original Sin, the second one, or at least the first one, and just trying to kind of work my way to the second.
Yeah, so we'll see how that's going to shape sales this winter, of course, because we're still in what for many people Christmas is over and now New Year's is coming in. For me, it's not over because we don't officially end Christmas until January the 6th. But being Puerto Rican, we celebrate all the way through January, basically, all the way to like more like 2 months. We're big on Christmas here. Maybe we're too much for a lot of people. This is something I found interesting over at Kotaku by Ian Walker. I Want to Be That Guy has been remastered. A group of fans has remastered I Want to Be That Guy, improving the notoriously difficult platformer performance for those still willing to subject themselves to dastardly tricks. This is the most faithful remaster of the original I Want to Be the Guy, trying to balance the spirit of the original game with the desire to consistent physics like the fan games that came after, and fixing some of the jank. Remaster all the planes and README file. Very important, I Want to Be That Guy creator Michael Cain O'Reilly has officially endorsed the remaster, calling it the perfect package for anyone who wants to try out the game in 2020 without the hassle. So apparently this is not something that also for the devs, this is why releasing your source code is important. O'Reilly added, even some dodgy ass MMF2 source files can eventually be used by someone else to try and keep your work alive. A game that actually the creator said, well, they had control over it and said, sure, go ahead. I'm not using it for anything. You want to play it? Go ahead. And encouraging other characters to do so as well. Okay, this is the news that we talked about. The PS5 now warns that if you're about to play the last gen, when you're about to play the last gen version of the game by Ethan Gash. This was 6 days ago. After months of some play accidentally playing the older version of new games on the PS5, Sony Next Gen console has now featured that fires off a warning if you're about to load up a PS4 version of the PS5 game. Originally spotted by VGC, the console now has players to confirm game version before loading up again the last and next gen versions available. You're about to play the PS4 version of this game. The prompt reads, do you want to switch to the PS5 version? Useful? Have you encountered that?
No, I mean, I don't.
You don't have a PS5, of course. So
no.
never mind. Not yet. But you kind of contact with the PlayStation. You're more into the PlayStation ecosystem than I am. So
PlayStation 5 anytime soon, but I guess that's useful. But I feel like if you wanted to play if you wanted to already have the PlayStation 5 version on your console, you would have already had it.
ironically, especially if most of these versions that we talked about were auto upgraded, like a
Hmm.
lot of companies were saying, "Oh, you bought this game, well, we're not gonna sell it to you again because we want you to continue playing our games in the new generation." Hopefully, it's a it feels more like one of those offers which is buy one get half and the other one half off kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where in the idea being, oh, you bought the game, it feels like bad PR that we sell it to you again. If that's what we want to do, of course, and we've done it before many times.
Skyrim.
Uh, you know, guilty as charged. And we're gonna give you a free update, which is not free because you already paid for the game. And if you have the free update, then they shouldn't be a problem. I guess the problem is that in the PlayStation ecosystem, they're two distinct games. It's not
Yeah.
actually an upgrade per se. It's not like you're upgrading the graphics and distinct architecture and ecosystem.
Yeah, but so the PlayStation 5 though does have an architecture. The store has an architecture to um not only differentiate between versions of the game, but it also has the ability to give you free upgrades and cross buys. Because
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing with the PlayStation 4 and late into the PlayStation 5 was, unfortunately, that Sony gave up on it, was pushing the Vita. The
Mm-hmm.
Vita, a lot of the games that the Vita had were cross buys. So what that means is that you bought a developer would make a game and make the exact same game, but one's on the one is specifically for the PlayStation Vita and one is for the PlayStation 4. Um, so you could have that, and it also does with the PlayStation 3, and then sometimes all three of them too. You get the PlayStation 3 version and you get the PlayStation 4 version. So you get all these versions for the price of one. So you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
buy the game again. And even some game companies too, when they some of their old PlayStation 3 versions, they actually did upgrade to the PlayStation 4 version, and they gave it for free. Like I noticed some of these games. I'm like, I have a PlayStation 4 version of this game, like this old PlayStation 3 game. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. That's neat.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that old architecture that's in there. So uh, game developers could take advantage of that. Not many of them. Sometimes that does depend on the what kind of what
Mm-hmm.
the developer or the publisher wants, because there are some games have the do use the advantage of having like cross saves so that you can transfer the save file in between games. So you're playing on your Vita, now you want to play on a PlayStation 4, you can transfer that save file very easily from your PlayStation Vita to your PlayStation 4, and vice versa when you're going on the go, so you can continue your game. Some games have that, but they make you buy both versions of the game. Nefari, the Digimon story games on the PlayStation 4 and the Vita, you had to buy the game separately, and then you had to, but you could cross save, use that cross saving. So that's there, but you had to buy the game separately. Then there's also the opposite where they make different versions for the game, but they don't use that feature either. So uh, Sony was kind of ahead on the curve on that, but I think that's more of a developer thing or publisher who has to take advantage of that.
Yeah,
Now,
they're not gonna force anybody to do that because yeah, they would hear a lot about it behind the scenes. Like, no, but this is a completely different game. We spend money and time developing. We want to be able to sell it as a distinct game, and you're stopping us from doing it. So, you know, yeah, I can see that. I can see it as a well. The thing is that when they say it has an upgrade, what this shows is that these are in fact, well, they're the same game, really. From a player's perspective, but really it's a new game because it's a new version for the new hardware. Right? They didn't take the old game and well, then maybe they did. They used the work they did on the old game, replicated it and created a new game, right? So it's not, it's structurally speaking, we're not talking about patches. Like they didn't, the version of a game is not a patch for the old game that brings it with new graphics and so, and merely compatibility and graphics patch. They took the old game and essentially did enough of a change to do that. So they don't have they, and probably the reason they do that is because if somebody just doesn't have a PlayStation game, so they wouldn't have to offer the old game, and maybe because the old game would be on sale, right? It's like, oh, I want to buy the old game, which is not very different. It's like buying Skyrim, right? You buy the old version, which is usually about half a price of the newer version, right? Or the revised, because it's the older version. But they got around that by saying, okay, we're gonna bundle all the DLC and the special edition, so you get more. But if you don't you buy the old version, just the vanilla version, and then you want the DLC, you have to pay extra, and those are not really discounted. So you end up paying as much as more for an
Yeah,
older
you're
game.
having to essentially buy the game again and not
Yeah,
like a bundle of the DLC. And Daniel also says that Divinity 2 apparently has a cross save between the Switch and the Switch version and Steam. That's actually pretty cool. That's cross like platform.
yeah. The idea being because they also have a multiplayer, they want everybody to be able to play together, and then you have to support those things as well. You know. Talk about games that could also be cross-platform. Stardew Valley just got another massive update by Ethan Gach. Stardew Valley 1.5, which I haven't downloaded. Pixelated farming sim Stardew Valley continues to grow with this time with a big 1.5 update for PC that adds a bunch of new stuff, including a beach farm map where veteran green thumbs can try their hand at growing crops in the sand, which is pretty difficult to do, by the way. I live here. I live in a tropical island, and the fact that right in the air. One of the things that happen, people might not know, is people who live in front of on the beach, or are people who live near roads in wintertime, know this. Salt eats away at your cars and other materials, particularly your car. So it can really devalue your car very quickly, especially underneath. Even though
Oh yeah.
you're not driving it in the water, that salt is in the air. So plants that live near the water
Absorb a lot of salt.
absorb a lot of salt.
Assuming they can thrive in that.
Small tropical island, like just those little, round islands, and about the plants at the front, right? Usually it seems like a wall of plants. Part of that is that those are the plants that can thrive there, and you get more diversity as you go inland because there's more fresh water, usually from collected water and rain. And also they, the frontage of plants protects them from all the salt that comes from the outside. Also, sand itself has very little or no nutrients. It's just silicon mostly, silica, and again, it tends to absorb a lot of salt. So that's why mangroves are so important. Mangroves are trees that are partly submerged, and they exist in these sort of cross, you know, we call it sweet water in Spanish, but it's not what it's called. Drinking water, non-salt water, and salt water when they mix. And one of the things that mangroves do is actually they filter the water because they have an ability to filter that salt effectively. But it's a fantasy game, so none of that applies. This update most significant late game content to Stardew Valley. Developed Eric Concern Ape Baron. I hope that's how I pronounce the last name. Wrote over on the game's website. It's by far the biggest solid chunk of new content has been added to the game since launch. Issued to a new beach farm, which offers a completely new environment and prohibits use of sprinklers to keep crops water for an extra better challenge. Oh, there's also a new set of advanced game options, customized new playthroughs, also more character creator options, including new hairstyles. Best of all, update 1.5 adds proper split screen co-op. Then you play the game locally with up to 3 or 4 other people, effectively offering an offline option for the game existing online multiplayer. So I guess, wow, that's a big map actually, on the beach. I probably wouldn't do that myself. I don't, I mean, a cottage at the beach would be nice, like an, a beach farm myself. Beach is nice, but I don't want to live on the beach itself.
Yeah, and yeah, I was actually watching somebody stream yesterday, or was it the day before the new patch. It's like, oh look, beach.
You need sprinklers to really thrive. At least you want to make a lot of money. Sax Wisen has us for 3 days ago, or actually last week, 19. Someone found a weird unreleased Simpsons game on the old Dreamcast on an old Dreamcast dev kit.
Oh.
It's called The Simpsons Bug Squad. It's posted the files from an old broken Dreamcast dev kit hard drive. Users quickly found himself on an unreleased, incomplete, and odd Simpsons game, which it seems to have never been publicly announced or revealed. Yesterday, Streak posted on the one to upload from files from the old Dreamcast dev kit. Was curious if folks would want them to do that. People seemed interested, so they uploaded the contents and the kit, and others began digging through the files. You see, Megavolt 85 was also able to get it running, allowing users to use PC, another user to play the game and release it and create a video of its action. That's a game more prototype of tech demo featuring associated with occasionally famous Simpson house and some characters from the show like Homer. What's Mystery Mosquito with players exploring the Simpsons house as a bug were presumably part of the squad based on the game's name.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, if it was something else like rodents or something, I'd probably bet it. Bugs, there's a chance they're gonna have rodents.
Actually, so a couple depressed demon 8. Well, hopefully you're less depressed. Thank you for the follow over on my Twitch channel. And second, the rats would make more sense because there was the Krusty's. There was a Krusty the clown game. It's like Krusty's Funhouse. The what are those called? So a lemming clone, because you have to get like the rats to go into essentially a mousetrap and die. And you have to do a bunch of like little things like that to get them out. So actually, the mice thing would have been kind of a nice tie-in into the. I always find it fascinating about like how just undiscovered old like canceled projects that exist. It makes you wonder how many like even other licensed games or these like high potential IPs existed, but just for whatever reason never made it to stores, or not even have like a teaser or like a blurb somewhere in some obscure magazine. It's just it exists in some like hard drive that's of like a really old computer that's just in someone's closet somewhere.
Also, these dev kits tend to have a lot of the stuff because the dev kits almost always come either with or so that and I think the Dreamcast had a hard drive, so that's one of the reasons why it was out in the Dreamcast, and it wasn't, for example, found a cartridge or in a hard drive of a PC or Macintosh. Which, by the way, a lot of people might not know, but a lot of PC games of the 1990s were developed in Macintosh, even though Macintosh has never been, or Apple, outside of Apple, the Apple II back in the day, a big gaming platform. Or today, iPads and the like are big gaming platforms because of iPhones, but not, there was a big chance after the Apple II, the Macintosh was their main product and didn't have a lot of gaming to it, attached to it. But a lot of games were. So if people start finding all Macs, with their hard drives intact, we may find some games. Who knows? I haven't seen a lot of those, but it's always a possibility.
Actually, was it modern vintage gamer? He actually, I think, posted a video this week on like someone sent him a cartridge with like a Sega Visitor sticker. I've just remember like sending that prototype in. It didn't like flourish. It was like a known game before, but in like a different versions. Like other fans have tried to kind of patch whatever version they had. That was like interesting too.
No, actually, the story, if I remember correctly, is the developer of what the game should have been was kind of like Asteroid type game, but it had no sticker. And they gave him a sticker, Visitor only to put in your shirt. And it was like, oh, it fits right here. So he put it there because Visitor is a game in the Sega. The Sega system has a game called Visitor, which is completely different to this game. This game is completely, it has no name.
Yeah.
It's just sort of concept. But it people say, oh, it's Visitor because it has Sega Visitor on it. And it just happens to be the thing that you put in your
Yeah,
shirt.
and it's just like, oh, it's like I got a bunch since they always give me these, even though I'm here dozens of times. It's like I thought it'd be funny just stick it on there, and like
Yeah.
it fits perfectly.
I mean, was it? Yeah, it was this year. No, last year that one of the biggest discovery
Hmm.
prototype where Sony and Nintendo working on one machine, and then they split up, and it's like, no, you're gonna want to do my own thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
then
and it
they
went to
sell,
sale.
then it gets sold, and it was I know I remember seeing like a documentary of them trying to get it to work because someone had it and it wasn't functional, but they
Yeah.
were at least
Let's
able to
see.
boot up.
Yeah, it sold for of this. It was discovered last year, but it's Super NES CD-ROM, or also known as Nintendo PlayStation, sold this year for $360,000. So that's one of the news that we're going to talk about. So over at the auction house. Yeah. So yeah, other piece of news. We have last piece of news from Cyberpunk 27. Latest patch resolved the PC save file size limit. I think we talked about this. No, we didn't talk about the problem because that news came out
No.
after we had a. For people who don't know, there was a problem with saves on Cyberpunk 27. It couldn't be bigger than 8 megabytes.
Yeah,
In today's
that's
gaming, 8 megabytes is like tiny. And the reason was it had to do something to do with item replication. It had too many items, and that apparently took too much space and crashed the saves.
yeah. That was if you tried doing the I guess a glitch to get your to kind of cheat and do that. But I mean, that could also happen through normal gameplay
Yeah,
if you ended up crafting a lot and just creating a bunch of items would
yeah.
increase the size of your thing.
As Kotaku Australia reported, PC players could see their save data corrupted if the save file grew beyond 8 megabytes. The endless quest for cache proved a major factor in hitting that save files to swell in the process. And if they hit that 8 megabyte limit, game over. Today's 1.0 save hotfix claims it will prevent this from arising in the future on PC, but won't salvage any saves that already have been corrupted.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
like, I'm looking at my Divinity 2 save, and that's like 20 gigabytes, like as my latest save. 20,
ye-
not gigabytes, 20 megabytes. It's
Yeah, because okay, what happens with save states? When you save, you're not saving the entire game. You might think, oh, I'm saving a big chunk of it. There's and people who have played Mass Effect, we have, and imported games know what we're talking about. Essentially, what you're saving every time you're saving a series of V8, your location, your items, all that stuff, right? That's there. Uh, Essentially, that's one reason, especially in older games, saves, coming from a save, especially like Skyrim has a bug that you have too many saves, and this happens in other games. There's a memory leak because essentially what tends to happen, a couple of things, but one of them is essentially the um, the game tries to run through all the saves to make sure that there's consistency, and they keep running and running and running and running and running, and so that takes more and more memory as they keep updating and adding more stuff. Right? They're not as if Unity, because it's an engine designed to play, create many games. Does is not as efficient, say, as other engines when it comes to those saves, and so they grow in size, and as well as so craft. I think one of the things that happened with crafting items was that the items, they were literally saved because it was a thing that you craft at any one moment for any one character, as opposed to say, oh, you're saving these things from this item that are different, and that's it. Like,
yeah,
essentially the item, say a rifle, is a rifle no matter what, and only the mods or whatever, it's the one that gets saved, not the entire rifle. Once you made the item, it became a unique item. So in order for the game to say, oh, you want this unique item, we're gonna have to save all the data of this unique item. And because it was just space that took off, and that probably kicked off some kind of
yeah.
problem, and
You
it
you you
corrupted.
you essentially keep adding to the text file more text, which increases its size, even if it's just little by little.
Yeah, and also repetitive data as well, which the computer has to complete. The machine has to completely read again and again. It has to make sure that all the variables are there, and any error starts piling up until you have a save file corrupted. That's one of the ways you can corrupt the file. There's many others. I haven't done programming in many moons, so stuff I don't know. It's a lot of stuff I don't know. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but that's just one of the ways it can happen. Um, so yeah. So we're gonna go into. So yeah. I mean, let's get the obvious elephant in the room. This was the year of COVID.
Oh yeah.
COVID-19 is named that way because it was announced to be a global pandemic by the start, really as late as March, but really January or February of 2020.
Yeah.
Um, and it already was a flown-blown pandemic by March of this year, which has caused the loss of life of millions around the world. And in the United States, it might approach to close to 500,000 probably by the same time, next year, by January to March of next year. So it's a serious condition. But we're talking about gaming here, so we're going to talk about how COVID has impacted the gaming community and how has it impacted. We talked about this before, but now that we have a nearly a year worth of, well, 3 days short of the end of the year worth of information, we can see some patterns and see correct some of our analysis and guesswork. Uh, so let's talk about major events. Let's jump into that. Impacts on the COVID-19 pandemic. According to Wikipedia, and we tend to agree because this is not a big being impacted by the outbreak various ways, most often due to conservative travel to and from China, elsewhere related slowdowns in manufacturing process within China. One of the things that COVID impacted was the manufacturing distribution in gaming industry. But one of the things that we didn't see because a lot of people had to work from home, but the distribution of the games themselves, for the most part, wasn't impacted because it was done online.
Yep.
However, it has impacted the availability of, you know, video cards, which were already impacted by, Bitcoin and other, electronics went up, some items went out, delays and deliveries of physical items. My computer took a long time, and I really had to reorder some parts because of the people say, "Oh yeah, we have those parts," and they didn't actually have them, and well, they're just lousy sellers.
Yeah.
But of course, you add delays, regular delays because of COVID, plus their attitudes. I could have corrected that much sooner had I, be able to know it much sooner. So, and a bunch of other stuff, right? So COVID has
The
particularly,
consoles. Yeah.
consoles. The hardware side of video games has been hit hard. I imagine if they were talking about 10 or 15 years back, where you also had the bulk of video games, at least on the console market, was still being delivered physically. Oh boy, COVID would have been much worse on that one because you have to, physically most of the disc production and just loading the data happens in places like Taiwan, right? Happens all over the world, but mostly used to happen a lot in Taiwan and still does, and cartridges and whatnot. Although by that time, even Nintendo wasn't using cartridges, so unless using portable devices.
Hmm.
And I think that's something we didn't factor in when we were talking about this as much as we should have, right?
Yeah.
Also, staying at home, and that in a way brought into focus even more sharply, crunch, because a people could work from home. That was a possibility. So being stuck in the office for 50, 60 hours a week, I'm not exaggerating when I say 60 hours a week. I think some people have said 80 to 100. There was a report that GTA, the team developing GTA, in some cases, boasted of 100-hour work weeks, which I don't think there's that many hours in a week, but I guess there are, you know. So how do you do that? You do that by what? Closing yourself in a hotel room or just, setting up a dorm or something in your offices. I mean, and now that people can work at home, it's delayed stuff because of course you're kind of isolated and depending on internet connections and if you're transferring file data and server. But it also meant that you didn't, well, I'm going to say something because ironically, there's a way around the news of crunch that can still be crunchy. because there
Yeah.
was crunch even people working at home. It still happened. Is that, oh no, you can go home at the end of the day in your own home, which is kind of what happened with a lot of companies. Cyberpunk 2077 being one of them, right? People
Yeah.
were working from home, which led to delays, but they were still expected to work as if they were in the office. So the culture of crunch is there, right?
But at least you know, at least they don't get to sleep under their desk. They get to sleep in their bed for like an hour.
I guess so, yeah. But we also know that, for example, a lot of in not only video game industry, but a lot of industries now, bosses now feel entitled to constantly text you and send emails to you because people have now phones. They have their own personal computers in their phones, so they're expected to always be connected to work chats, and messages and emails. So working from home, which once was seen, and I remember I'm that old. Back in 1980s, people were like, oh, the dream of being able to
Telecommute.
telework, right? Telecommute, because of course you would be more comfortable at home, and that was being promised. That was a big news back in 1984, 85 in games like PC Magazine back in the day. You can look that up on Google. But now, I don't know if working at home is a good idea if your boss can and will pester you constantly at all hours of the day and night and weekends. Because even when you're not home, oh, I'm at the bar. Hey man, we need a report on the overlays on this. Like, dude, it's 4 in the morning. I'm getting out of the bar. Fuck, right? It's crunch is not a location. Doesn't have a location. It's a state of mind, right? Um, and so, ironically, I would think you would need anti-crunch rules or even laws to say, okay, you work 9 to 5. This happens in the office, and what happens in the office stays in the office. You don't get to take your work home, and you don't get to be pestered, right? You can tell your boss to f off if he calls you after hours unless it's a real emergency. And these are the conditions for real emergencies. Like, I don't know what happened
Well,
to the
yeah,
you know
it would have to be like it would have to be one of those jobs that it's an on call job. Like what emergency would a video game developer need to come in at like midnight? Like, oh, the server crashed. We need to fix it. Like, that's not an emergency. No one's gonna die because the server crashed and no one can play World of Warcraft. Like, no one's gonna die because of that. This isn't like some like police job or like like an ambulance, a first responder job or something like that.
Well, you say that, but people who work in servers, they actually are on call. That's how it works. I mean, you
Hmm.
have you have your regular people who work 9 to 5 on the service, and the IT
And well,
people.
that also brings like another point that a lot of people get around these rules by not being hourly. It's like, oh, you're at salary. We get, you're essentially agree to work at all hours of the day as much as we need you to. It's like
Yeah, salary
my job
contract.
when
Yeah,
yeah, my job's like, yeah, you have to work at least 40 hours, but we expect you to at least work 50 hours a week.
yeah, and that's also brought the talk even more so now about unionizing workplaces, right? Particularly video game places, right? Last year or the year before was the saga, and I don't mean the saga of unionization, but the saga, the voice actors, Screen Actors Guild side of the voice actor side of the Screen Actors Guild went on strike to get better conditions. And that has led a lot of people saying in the industry that they need to unionize. And that's not the only reason why they should unionize, because, of course, this also was the year of sexual misconduct accusations, particularly in one company and many companies, but one of them was, in particular, Ubisoft,
Hmm.
with even accusations of rape or attempted rape.
Yeah.
Um, and it impacted not only developers, it impacted competitive gaming. It impacted a lot of things as part of the larger Me Too movement. Um, and there's some examples here. talking
Uh,
about EA, talking about Ubisoft. I mean,
and of
let's
course,
just
a lot of people resigning, just not being held accountable to anything, just resigning, getting to leave with their golden parachute. So I see you,
uh,
Michelle Ancel, and now you're. Uh, now let's see where Beyond Good and Evil 2 will end up. Even though I'm not going to touch that game because I'm not going to touch any Ubisoft game now.
I mean, just looking at just a news from October, as of late October. We're not doing it, and we're talking about general news. We're not going month, week by week, month by month. We'll do that with video games itself, but not these news. Uh, Ubisoft survey reveals internal survey, right? Reveals that 25% of the employees have seen or experienced workplace misconduct. Uh, that's an internal survey done by Ubisoft. Probably they hired another company to do that. But even then, the thing with these surveys is that you can at very least add or subtract 5% to this, and because of course people will be very cagey. In other words, if 25% if of the 25% say 15% say that they have experienced workplace misconduct, it's probably close to 20 to 25. If 25% say that they've seen both things, you probably go from 25 to 30, even 40%. Why? People are not stupid. They know, or they hope they will not be basically fingered as a person who talked, who blabbed, and said too much, even though this is just a survey. Um, because these are jobs are very important to them, because capitalism, you know. Um, and so that's a thing. So yeah, this year has been the year of COVID, the year of harassment, also the year of the big buy. We talked about early on Tencent, and this is from August 9th. So this list, of course, has been updated with the recent news. Every game company that Tencent has invested in, Riot Games, 100%, Epic
Hmm.
Games, 40%, and Epic Games is huge. Blue Hole, Player Battlegrounds, 11.5%, and there was a lawsuit between Blue Hole and Epic Games last year. Ubisoft, 5%. And by the way, Ubisoft was fighting last year an attempt at a hostile takeover, and yet Activision Blizzard 5%, Grinding Gear Games Path of Exile 80%, Supercell 84%, Platinum Games Undisclosed Investment, Yager
Hmm.
Undisclosed Investment, Frontier Development 9%, Paradox Interactive, Funcom, and Discord received $158 million in funding last year, including an undisclosed amount from
Ooh,
Tencent, among other
Discord.
many other. Yeah.
The
So,
the chat thing that everyone uses. Hmm.
mm-hmm, yeah, which we have a Discord ourselves in the channel. So if you want to join that, just let me know. I'll send you a message. But they're not the only ones. Microsoft buying studios, because Microsoft has bought a lot of studios, including some very big ones, uh, like Bethesda. This is the news from November 15. XBS chief Microsoft will absolutely continue purchasing studios following Bethesda's acquisition. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had some news that Microsoft wanted to be the first. Microsoft Games was well, they're not only Microsoft Games; it's just Microsoft Xbox Games, I think, or they call them this, a Quad A studio overall. Uh,
uh,
so I don't know if this article has a list. Let me see if I can find
Quadruple A studio.
a list of developers bought by Microsoft. And yes, I should have done this before
But
the podcast began, but
I know the makers of Senyo Sacrifice got bought.
mm-hmm,
Is it Ninja Theory? Ninja Theory got bought.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Mike. According to Kotaku, over 6 days ago, oh, this is the 9th. This is November. No, this is October, I think. No, September. September 22nd. Microsoft has now 23 first-party studios. Here's what they're making: 343, Compulsion Games, Double Fine Productions, In Exile Entertainment, people who are making Baldur's Gate 4, Bowers Deep, and other things. Of course, Mojang, they bought it 2014, Ninja Theory 2018, Obsidian Entertainment 2018, and Bethesda 2020. Playground Games, Rare, they bought Rare in 2002. That's pretty old. Uh, what else? Well, something more recent. Uh, yeah, and soon to be out of 8 Bethesda studios
Yeah, I was
because it
gonna
was
say. I was
Bethesda
gonna say it wasn't.
and
Was
all the studios that came with Bethesda as well, right?
yeah.
So
Was it? Isn't it like the? Didn't they actually buy like the Zenomax gaming department?
Cinemax Gaming, yeah. Which was Bethesda publish, games. They changed the naming about 2 years ago or something like that. So yeah, you have this shows the trend in this year of consolidation, right? Like we talk. I think we talked this. I don't know, even during the podcast or before the podcast that Microsoft was doing it on the American side, and Tencent seemed to be doing it um, on the Chinese side. Amazon also bought a couple of studios as well
It's
because
like
they wanted to do their own gaming as well.
was it this year or last year that
Last year,
EA
yeah.
bought out was it Respawn Games, makers
Yeah,
of the
yeah. I
Titanfall
mean,
series.
we say, oh, you talk about EA. It's like, well, we've seen EA do that before, but they usually the acquisitions were relatively small, one by one. Microsoft has
Not
made
yeah.
huge
These
acquisitions, right?
they're going on a spending spree.
Yeah, which can be good in the short term, but in the long term, if something happens in Microsoft's not going to fall, but we've seen it with EA, Activision, others that when anything sort of twitches the line, right, everything getting jittery, the first thing they start doing is start dumping studios. So now they may have all the money today, tomorrow to make all the games they want, but the day after that, if somebody a new CEO something comes like, no, we don't need any of this, you're gone. I mean, what happened to Sony about 5-6 years ago? They sold a bunch of stuff, right? They just kept the PlayStation, Sony Studios open because it makes them a lot of money, and also shows that while video games as an industry are growing, in a rare way, they're still small fry compared to these whole much even bigger companies like Tencent that can just make these multi-million, multi-billion dollar acquisitions and just Tencent is doing it by buying stock, right?
Yeah.
They rarely buy a studio outright. Microsoft is saying no, we're going to buy it outright. So, and that also gives you the idea of, let's be honest, this is a year that officially China has parallel or exceeded the United States as being the biggest gaming market in the world across the board, not simply in certain games like MMO something like that. Across the board, I think certainly China has at least matched um, the United States. And so having Tencent, and that was some of the concern with Tencent that we're going to have Chinese censorship, which we've seen some of that already. Because that was, with the Hong Kong protest last year, we saw aspects of that, and we've seen some games being changed.
Yeah, wasn't there one? I know. I don't think we reported, but GOG, like they sort of decided not to put a game on their store because it had controversy. The controversy was that there was just some Easter egg about the that
Mm-hmm,
meme that the Chinese leader looks like Winnie the Pooh or something.
mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the game was Devotion. Let me see.
Devotion. There you go.
Yeah. Devotion developers vows we won't stop striving after being dropped by GOG. The cold horror title remains unavailable for now. Yesterday reported the Devotion, a cold horror title from Taiwanese developer Red Candle Games, will be re-released on GOG after being available for nearly 2 years. A few hours after this announcement was made, GOG, owned by CD Projekt Red, unceremoniously dumped the game via the below tweet. Earlier today, it's announced that the game's Devotion is going to GOG after receiving many messages from gamers. We have decided not to list the game in our store.
Hmm. Yeah, but I don't think CD Project Red has any. Well, who's to say? I guess like Chinese investors, not
Yeah, but
that
let's
we
see.
know
I
of.
mean, let's read the following paragraph. It's gone down the rest was like a couple called sick with a buzz tweet receiving a rather brutal chewing and shoeing, as in shoe, I guess, and at least one developer pulling the game from union protest. While the many messages from gamers seem a ridiculous phrase, and there's little evidence of any adverse reaction in Western-centric media, the original controversy over the game was largely fueled by users on the Chinese social platform Weibo. The hashtag related to the game, uh, hashtag, and it uses, you know, Chinese characters that I cannot read, so I apologize. Two historical engagement figures, and the point is making that just because the many messages aren't immediately visible to us doesn't mean that doesn't exist. Some conspiracies seem to diminish parties involved, but as the Monster Hunter movie recently showed, there's a large and vociferous Chinese audience ready to jump on anything perceived as anti-China without prompting. Yeah, in other words, and we see this also with movies and other things, that we're seeing more and more games, and this is the difference between, say, oh, you can't have Nazi iconography in Germany. You couldn't have that for quite a while, probably close. I think it ended like a couple of years ago, and it still has limits. If you want, and no, we're going to change all our games, or we're not going to publish this game because it's not going to sell in China,
Yeah.
right? Um,
And of course, this has led to a lot of like people worrying about like even like especially I believe when it comes to like LGBTQ representation because China is not that tolerant about that stuff. It's
mhm.
similar to Russia, but like unfortunately Russia doesn't have that much pull compared to China when it comes to how much media that gets consumed by China. Um, a lot of people I know there's like a lot of people pointing out like, oh look, this movie has LGBTQ representation, and it's just like some random character, like a quick little throwaway line, which might seem nice, but when you think about that, oh, this line can easily be censored or cut out or changed into something that's not LGBTQ for Chinese market, then there we go. Is it really representation? And
Also,
not.
let's talk about one of the biggest games of the year was Genshin Impact, which is a free game made in China. So yeah, let's see how big Genshin Impact. Uh, it's a free game. It's an app. It's basically a, a phone game for the most part, although
Oh,
you play on PC as well. And it has made it's for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, Android, iOS, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation 5, and it made a lot of money.
yeah,
Um,
I think I've seen the art. I see. Well, it looks very anime, video game y, but I think I'm pretty sure I've seen the art style around. I don't know anything about this game though.
Yeah, and but it's also driven by monetization, right? Including a
Hmm.
fact that the Washington Post, and this is from the Wikipedia article, posted added that such a well-designed game from aesthetic perspective can lead some to gamble with the player's gacha system. The playing similar to Legend of Zelda, but a while sorry, controversy in 2019, China Joy Convention, among others, some fans of the Breath of the Wild. So it's has
Oh,
its you know its controversies. But the fact that it's one of the biggest games this year and it's primarily Chinese made game uh, shows you the impact of the development and the force of the Chinese market in the United States, right? Um,
oh yeah, I see. I just like I'm looking at the PlayStation Store. We got some $5 stuff, of course, event for $10, and crystals.
mhm.
$100 crystal bundle.
Yeah. Another thing is that this year was there were a lot of remakes, of course, including the Final Fantasy VII remake or
What
expansions of existing games like Persona 5 Royal. Uh,
wasn't there another Resident Evil remake that came out this year too?
as well. Yeah, Resident Evil 3, April the 3rd. Um, and also a lot of games that also this is a year I think that a lot of games sort of came and went very quickly. Like they were hot for a minute or so, and then nothing.
Yeah, Fall
Um,
Guys. That's one of maybe three games that came out in 2020 that I actually played, and it's only because it was free. That seemed flash in the pan game,
yeah.
and I think and I found it interesting. Among Us, that game sort of seemed to come out of nowhere, but it's been around for 2 years prior. But I think COVID definitely helped it because it's a fun party game. It's really cheap, and it has some monetization in terms of costumes. But overall, it's like you buy it and you have it.
Hmm.
Android on mobile, but you have to. It's littered with ads. You have to watch like ads in between games, but it's accessible
Yeah.
and it's a fun essentially can you guess who's lying murder mystery kind of game thing
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that at least seemed to have stuck around for longer than Fall Guys.
And you bring Among Us, it also brings in one particular piece of news, like famous people, particularly Alejandra
It
Ocasio Cortez, playing Fall Guys and getting
for
a
Among Us.
deluge, yeah, Among Us, a deluge of views on Twitch, right?
Oh yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, for example, that was a one could argue a successful use of Twitch for something other than gaming, using gaming as a gateway to say politics.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there was a lot of controversies here about the U.S. military and their Twitch channels and getting bombarded by people saying, "Oh, hey, so where do I sign up for committing, to commit war crimes and stuff like that?" Which was a very interesting take, considering that most of the image that we have of gamers, especially on Twitch, is the macho male gamer, 30 plus, who wants to play Call of Duty all the time and doesn't want to get political. And yet
Well,
it was, I guess maybe it was something that was directed at them directly, right? That there was a group of people saying, "No, we're gonna bombard these channels and and see
yeah.
what they're up, But
Well, I guess it's also about the messaging. It's like join the military versus AOC's message of get out there and vote.
yeah, so yeah, Twitch got political in many ways because also this was the year of Black Lives Matter, and it did have an impact, well, somewhat of an impact on the video game industry in that a lot of figures went out and supported in support of Black Lives Matter, but that was sort of a more general corporate message, like, oh yeah, we want to be seen at least to be on the right side of history,
Yeah.
even even if we exploit the hell out of our
Yeah,
workers and whatnot.
of course. There's those people or companies that'll jump all over it because it's the woke brand thing to do. Like,
Hmm.
oh, we can look good and get free advertisement and look essentially look good in the public eye for now while this thing is hot. But I know there's a couple of things. Didn't itch.io do like this huge bundle to support something Black Lives Matter related, I
Yeah,
believe.
they were selling, I think, games as low as $5. I think it was a
Yeah,
$5 in a couple of bundles, but the original was a $5 bundle.
yeah,
You got
and it's a $5 bundle, and then at like developers want to jump on board and like be part of the bundle. And it's like 200 games on itch.io for $5, and some of these, a lot of them are going to be like small little avant-garde games, but there are actually quite a bit of like high profile games in this bundle. I know Night in the Woods was one of them. That's like, ooh, $5 for Night in the Woods and some other games that I might be interested in. Like, I'll hop on that.
Yeah, I missed it, but yeah, it did cross our radar. We did talk about it. Um, and I think ultimately we said this last week, and I say it again. I think Cyberpunk 2077 gets Game of the Year, not because it's good or bad, whatever, because the whole every aspect of
The
the
whole
development and the game itself sort of
this
congeals,
Yeah,
what
this game
2077,
felt like it did come out in March, April when it was meant to, because I feel like throughout the year, this is all everyone could talk about was Cyberpunk 2077. It got delayed. It got delayed again. They went back on their word about crunch. Oh no, it might not be as good anymore. It causes seizures. People attack the person who said that it causes seizures over it. And then, of course, it came out broken and unfinished, and the list of controversies goes on and on. Uh, It's
And the theme of the game is living in a hyper corporate environment where there's a very few people that are extremely powerful and rich, and then everybody else gets crapped on. And you're supposed to be this punk like figure who is going against the system, or at least trying to survive inside the system. Feels very much like 2020 for a lot of people, even though probably most people were not really fighting against the system, but at least they felt that the walls that usually have more space between the walls kind of came closer and closer to them, and they kind of felt that. So I think it has everything. If you want to talk about crunch, you want to talk about overwork, you want to talk about abuse. Well, not a lot of news about sexual harassment in City Pilot, right? But there's been some talk about transphobia of
yeah.
both the marketing and within the game itself, right? And how it handles that and how it's complicated. Jesse Gender has done a video on that, so you should check it out. You check her out and see her take on it, which is more insightful
Yeah,
than
the
we can provide.
Laura K. Buzz also did a video on it as well.
Yeah, you go talk to them because they are closer to the subject than we are, unless we take some other steps to make it change it. But otherwise, they're the subject matter expert, at least closer than we are anyway. And it crystallizes it. But also, The Last of Us 2, I think it's what crystallizes the other aspect because I haven't played it.
I haven't either.
We're not criticizing. I'm not going to criticize the game because I cannot tell you what the game is about other than general stuff that's out there, whether it's good or bad. But it also crystallizes what we also be talking about, the outer sort of, and it's I think one of the reasons why it was the one that won Game of the Year. This still remaining idea of video games aping movies. That's among critics, or certain critics, among developers, certainly, especially the director of The Last of Us was very much into this idea, right? It's like, well, we were pained and all that. And it's a great sacrifices to make this game. It's like, oh, okay, settle down. And all that idea, the delusions of grandeur vis-a-vis Hollywood, vis-a-vis other media. And I think The Last of Us sort of, at least for me anyway, really laid it bare, right? I think people are sort of like, yeah, you got to start grounding your experience on what you're doing and not the sort of visions of another medium, right? Especially
Yeah.
in a year where cinemas were closed for the most part, right? I guess some people could go to cinemas depending on their hometown and restrictions and when they open and how many people were allowed, etc. But most places were closed. So people watching cinema at home, they're watching essentially videos at home. So it's not the same experience. So I think a lot of the sort of dreaming of comparing yourself with Hollywood this year fell flat because there was not that one correlation. It's like, oh, I play a game and then I go and watch a movie. It's like, oh, the greatness of the great cinema I experienced.
Nope,
It's like, no,
it's all in your living room or your
yeah,
bedroom or your
I can
office.
switch it on like I switch Amazon or whatever. It's not that. I mean, it's great. It could be a great movie. It could be great stuff, but that idea of the big
Yeah,
impact of cinema.
getting dressed up to go and drive down to the cinema and pay for overpriced food and sit down and actually like the cinemas around here have been getting fancy with their chairs. So sitting down on a nice leather chair recliner thing, just and actually some of them even have like you can order food and they'll bring it to you right straight to your chair. It's like
Yeah, because they want
having
to
that
be
nice.
competitive, right? They want
Yeah.
to have they're selling the experience of going to the movies. But the idea in the video game industry is like if you make your games quote unquote cinematic, then they're more they're they're of a higher caliber. And that's the whole argument really around The Last of Us, especially in defense of stuff that they probably screwed up, right? Was that, well, this is a great game because it's great fiction because it's cinematic, right? People were like, yeah, that we're not buying that anymore because
It's not well written. It's not in terms of like plot beats and stuff. I think that's like the biggest argument. The story's not structured very well. And of course,
yeah,
there's also false advertising with it as well.
and which is another problem with Cyberpunk 2077 had as well, right? The other game, it's like false, bull shots, false advertising, and also we talk about this. This was a year that we said it in passing, but this was a year where there was no E3, and well, there was because but it was limited, and actually the E3 of Cyberpunk was in 2019. People remember, Keanu Reeves going like, "Oh, and you," and that was great. That was a great
They're
one in
all
2019.
breathtaking.
You're all breathtaking, but in 2020 there was none of that except for maybe virtual presentations, and everybody kind of shrugged. It's like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's not that important, right? Nintendo, I think, was the best one that came out because everybody wanted to watch the Nintendo exclusives because they already had that panel. Like, no, we do this much
Every
smaller
year.
scale, more. We don't have to have the big presentation. And people are like, oh yeah, we want to watch that. I never saw anybody. It's like, oh, Sony presentation in July. It's like, okay, sure. People were excited about the hardware that was coming out, but not entirely the games, right? It's like, oh, they're gonna have this big thing. It's like, no, they're not, because E3 is not there anymore, and E3 might not come back, at least not in the form that we recognize, not in person, because there's, I mean, people already have been sort of shunning E3 largely inclusive, but it's like, yeah, why go back? I mean, we can do this anywhere.
Yeah.
So there's been, I think we're going to see in this incoming decade, for all of us who survive this incoming year and decade, the ripple effects. I think that's the thing, that it's very difficult to effects of 2020 and COVID and everything else. The first ones, of course, being all the games that got delayed to at least the first half of next year, or just to 2021, including the latest Halo game, Infinity, disappear at the stroke of midnight. And while yes, vaccines are coming out, I'm going to warn you, everybody, just because you get vaccinated doesn't make you 100% invulnerable, and you're still going to have some restrictions as more. You need to have. That's where herd immunity really works with vaccination. It isn't that people are like, well, if people catch it, then that's not how herd immunity works. You need to get vaccinated, and when you have a significant portion of vaccination over a significant portion of people and time, where essentially the disease cannot sort of make inroads, and sort of gets reduced, then it starts to go from a pandemic to an epidemic to a thing that you can catch, that can be treated like, oh, this person has it, okay, let's put them in isolation and make sure that it doesn't spread, and you deal with it. So people are still going to get COVID, by the way. It's a disease. It's out there. It's a version of an existing disease, but it's not going to disappear just because you got vaccinated. Oh, people got vaccinated. Okay, everybody can go out, and no, because that a lot of people can still get sick while either waiting for the vaccines to not only get vaccinated but also to take effect as well. And 100%, and not all the vaccines are the same, and it's all things
Yeah,
happen. So
that's
just in 2021, we're still going to be talking about COVID. Probably by this time next year, we're going to say, oh, COVID has passed, hopefully. But even then, the
and it
repercussions are going to last for years.
it's also gonna be interesting to see how video game sales like for this year versus next year are gonna be if once there's less restrictions and stuff. Hopefully, the if video game sales are gonna go down because there's not as many people stuck indoors.
Yeah. I think that's another thing we talk about digital distribution, is that I made, mostly me, made a lot of predictions that COVID-19 was going to hit the industry very hard, and it did on the hardware side, but not on the software side, because people already have PCs or consoles that they could play the games in. And by the way, the stimulus check thing we didn't talk about. A lot
Hmm.
of countries, as in the United States give one $1,200 stimulus check. They might give well, I mean, nothing. We're now in the three things that happen: no money, $600, or $2,000. I think was the last figure, highest figure that got floated. So nothing means, well, nothing. $600 means a lot of people are going to start try to buy PlayStations or Xboxes, because that's about the price range, and $2,000 means that people hopefully will save some of that money, and a lot of that money is still going to go to buying games, stuff like that. But once restrictions get lifted, we might never get the 2,000, because if people get vaccinated enough, but if nobody gets the $2,000, even though the economy is going to be still impacted, because we are technically, unofficially, still, but we are in a recession, and possibly in a great second great recession. So we'll see. We'll see. That might be a thing, is that without people staying home, they can do other things, and also there's no stimulus money. So the assumption is that people can just go out and get work, but the economy is still going to be bad. if there's no major investment from the outside to generate jobs, all those restaurants and stuff like that, all the people that play video games are people who work and own restaurants and go office, middle office work and all that. And so, yeah, if they're unemployed or underemployed, they're not going to buy anything. So you can have a lot of people owning consoles but not being able to afford the games
Of the
because there's no
software.
used market this time around. And that's the other side of
Yeah,
this.
and
There's
ooh,
no used
that
market. Yeah.
might end up giving Microsoft an advantage because uh buy our console, give us $11 a month, and you get to play this huge library of games for free.
Yeah, I think that's another thing about will this in this decade, because remember we're talking about the first year of a new decade. Will the strategies from Sony, Amazon's not seem to be working, but who knows? Stadia is still sort of like a zombie still in the background.
Google.
Yeah, Google.
Amazon strategy was the that one game that got put out
Yeah,
and then recalled.
yeah. So it was Google Stadia. Apologies to that. It's still zombified somewhere. It might pick up again. Who knows? Microsoft with everything being online, and we'll see. We'll see if that happens, or maybe people won't because people are going out and working out, and they don't have time to at home. It's like, why do I pay for yet another rental service? On top of everything else, where I can be watching Netflix or whatever, or going to the movies instead of playing video games at home, right? Who knows? And of course, you have Nintendo and Switch, which is you can take your games anywhere. So we'll see. So, folks, that rambling conversation was our take on 2020, the year in gaming. So, Chapelman, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You could find me at Chopamon pretty much anywhere. I am I am Chopamon underscore on here on Twitch and Twitter, but I primarily hang out over on YouTube under Chopamon.
And you can find me here, still playing Pathfinder. A bit frustrated last time I played it, but still going strong. Hope I can finish it and then move on to other games this year. Also, have to do more major upgrades to my setup, but I'm working on that as well. So hopefully we can get back on the big name games this year or next year, including probably not limited to Mass Effect when it comes out again. So thank you, ready for coming, and as always, we'll see you when we see you. Bye bye, everybody.